For highlights of Rogers Community Force programs, listen to Coast 800, the spirit of radio, Cable FM 88.5, BC's music leader. A complete listing of Rogers Cable Force programming can be found in the Leader newspaper, the voice of Surrey and North Delta. Full listings of Rogers 4 programming can also be found in the Langley Times. And for our viewers in New Westminster, the Royal City Record Now also has a complete listing of Rogers Community 4 programming. Read all about your community in New Westminster's hometown newspaper, the Royal City Record Now.
You're watching Rogers Community 4.
Welcome to Rogers 4 Sports.
Three on two, waits for the trailer, and Johnson scores! Beautiful goal! Right wing for Powell River, her ball into the area, looking for Carla Gale. Oh, what a great goal! Picked up by McLean, moves in on the net. He shoots, another save, another shot. Oh! And the whistle blows, and there's no goal.
Meadows wins the championship for 89 in their first ever appearance in the final. They go away with the championship trophy.
From the Grand Ballroom of the Royal Towers Hotel in New Westminster, welcome to a very special edition of Rogers 4 Sports. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Erickson, and the 1991 Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame Awards banquet, tonight's program promises to be an extremely intriguing evening. We'll be talking to quite a few of former inductees and highlights of their past accomplishments and some of their games and most talented and hard-working individuals. Joining me right now is Archie Miller, the curator for the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, which is located in New Westminster. Archie, can you tell me a little bit about the history of the lacrosse in Canada?
Well, it starts as a native people game. It's a sport that they use. It's more than a sport. It's really very much a religious experience for them. It is very much a part of their lifestyle. It is middle North America. There is no Canada, United States when this is going on. The native people use this as a conditioning exercise, as a way of training their bodies to serve their God. And we came along, Europeans came along in the 1800s and saw this as being an activity that we could refine to our needs. And so from the mid-1800s until today, we have refined that game. So you're taking a game that is of native beginnings, of endurance, of speed, of finesse, and the European form has been to change it from box lacrosse, and now it's field lacrosse, of course, coming back. But it goes from the native beginnings to this wonderful game we have today.
It goes to the present day now. Being the curator of the museum, all these artifacts and everything else that's connected with lacrosse, they must be kept somewhere.
Well, they're kept in the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and New Westminster is the home of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. It's a place in which we like to say we keep a lot of memories. We have collections of trophies and medals and sticks and photographs, and we're always after information that relates to lacrosse in Canada. This is the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. I believe we are correct when we keep saying we're the only national Hall of Fame west of Ontario. I believe that's still correct, and we're quite proud of that. It's been in the city for many years now, and it does have a great collection.
They have. I've been through that a couple times, and I'm extremely pleased with it. The game of lacrosse must have changed completely different from when you started your job over there.
Well, not so much since when I did it, but there's some people in this room tonight who go back to a game when the game is just a field game. the box lacrosse would be invented. And then a lot of the other people that we will see inducted this evening, if they're not in the builder category, they'll be in the box lacrosse category. So you have those two forms. Now in the last, 10, 15 years, there have been other forms that are being developed to bring younger people into it. There's women's lacrosse. It's just a growing sport, a tremendous sport.
Thank you, Archie, for joining me, and we'll be hearing from you later on this evening. And very special thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
As I mentioned earlier, we'll be hearing more from Archie Miller later on. He is the curator for the museum. But right now, we're going to be taking a trip down memory lane for lacrosse, and we will be, from its inception of Canada, or in Canada rather, we'll be looking at different builders, behind the scenes, and the people behind the scenes that no one basically hears about. And we will see how they will have changed the game. But right now, we're going to take a very special look at a special man, Dr. W.G. Beers, the man who was responsible for organizing the game of lacrosse in Canada. Dr. W.G. Beers was the first member of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame and is known as the real father of organized lacrosse in Canada. Born in Montreal in 1841, he eventually wrote a book entitled Lacrosse, the National Game of Canada. He was also responsible for taking 2 teams to England where they played a command performance before Queen Victoria. Dr. W.G. Beers is a former Lacrosse Hall of Fame inductee. Now, the reason we are here tonight is to honor 6 special people who are about to be inducted into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. But before we meet them, I had a chance earlier to talk to some of the former inductees. Joining me right now is Mr. Wally Donaldson, and you have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Could you tell us what year?
1989, Steve.
And you are a builder in that capacity?
Yes, yes.
And what, in actuality, is the difference in a builder? And despite we were talking about difference, what's the difference in a builder and everything else?
And a player. Okay, there's 2 categories, builders and players. And there's quite a distinct difference. There are people like Al Uthwaite and Kevin Alexander who are being inducted this year who are outstanding lacrosse players. Builders are usually guys like myself who wanted to be players. Turned out that we weren't very good, so we moved into the other side. Builders are really people that have spent their time in lacrosse in the administrative side, coaches, managers, presidents, executive, etc.
And how active are you still being involved with lacrosse?
My wife says too active. I'm president of Vancouver Burrards and have been for the last 5 years.
That takes up a lot of your time, I presume?
Yes, a lot of time, but it's very good. We have an exceptionally good group of young athletes and a good executive built around us now, and for all the time it takes, you get a lot back out of it, so it's worthwhile.
And something of this magnitude has to do a lot for lacrosse.
The Hall of Fame is traditionally a very good night because it brings a lot of people together. A lot of longtime lacrosse people who both in Eastern and Western Canada get together on this night, and it does a lot of good for it.
Well, I'd like to thank you for joining, Mr. Waller Donaldson, and I've enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this evening.
Thank you, Steve.
I have a very special guest with me right now, Mr. Jack Woods, who has the distinction of being the oldest living member inducted into the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. You were telling me, the senior lacrosse in 1922?
22, yes.
And the game must have changed just drastically.
Oh, yes. Well, you went into box lacrosse after a certain length of time. And when you're inside, while you're playing a 6 or 7 man team each, you know, where in the field game, you played 12 men in it.
Can you tell me a little bit about your most memorable game?
Oh.
One of your fondest memories about lacrosse?
No, I don't think there's any special one. I know that I was up in the top teams when we played. We played in the East, and we played in Amsterdam. We played a lot of lacrosse right around the city of Westminster.
How many man cups did you play in?
How many men cup? Oh, I don't know how many exactly.
And which position did you prefer to play?
Well, I played inside home. Inside home was the lacrosse.
And for the people watching on the TV right now, which position would be inside home? Would that be like a defense or forward position?
No, it's right just outside the opposing team, that the ball would be passed up the field to you, and maybe you'd have to move and break in the open so that you could have a shot on goal. And you were the one that scored most of the goals, actually, because they had the more opportunities than others.
Well, I'd like to take this special opportunity to thank you, Jack Woods, and it's been my pleasure to interview you. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of this special awards banquet tonight.
Thank you very much.
Joining me now is Mr. Sid Warwick, also inducted in 1989 in the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And you were saying you grew up and with Mr. Donaldson?
That's right. We grew up in Renfrew District, and some Hall of Famers we were fortunate enough to be coached by. Pop Phillips, who's also a member of the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Bill Barber, Gord Gimple. We were fortunate to have good coaching.
And you were inducted in the players capacity?
That's right, the players category, yeah.
And what basically does that entail?
Well, it's players that have played for a certain period of time, a lengthy period of time, and have contributed, I guess, some special skill like goal scoring, tenure, that type of thing.
And which team did you actually play on?
Vancouver Burrard.
And you had a lot of fond memories with them?
Oh yeah, that was one of the good periods of my life. We got to travel a bit, mainly into Eastern Canada. We had a pro league one year and were able to go down into the States. We played in the Detroit Olympia and in Montreal Forum and Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens. And that was 1968 when they had the league as a pro league.
You've seen a lot of things come and go. An evening such of this, it's got to do a lot for the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm especially impressed with some of the inductees this year. I don't like to single out people, but Kevin Alexander, in my estimation, is probably the greatest pure goal scorer that played the game. And I played against some good ones, including Jack Bionda and Bobby Allen.
There's some marvelous players there with a lot of talent, and you can't ask for any more than that.
The game deserves more. It should be well attended. I hope people who are watching this program take the time to go out and watch a few games. I'm sure if they get 3 or 4 games on their belt, they'll become a lacrosse fan.
You can easily be addicted. Joining me was Mr. Sid Warwick. A very special thank you. Was inducted in 1989.
Thank you.
Joining me right now is Mr. Paul Parnell, a very special person and well-known person in the Lower Mainland for his lacrosse skills. You were inducted in the Hall of Fame in 1980, and you've got to have a lot of fond memories with this.
Oh, it's been great. All the memories are great. The people that you play with over the years, the nights like tonight, where you reminisce about the games that you've had in the past and the players that you played against. It's just been great.
How did you get started in lacrosse?
Well, I started when I was 12 probably, and all our friends played lacrosse, so naturally it was a thing to do in Peterborough, Ontario, where I'm from, and they had a minor lacrosse school, and all summer long it was, it was during the day, it was playing lacrosse and just having a good time.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us, but I don't want you to go anywhere because we've got something very special we want you to watch. You watch our monitor, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and have a little bit of highlights on Mr. Paul Parnell. During his playing career, Paul Parnell held 23 WHL and 3 Mann Cup records. His statistics in the 14 years he played with the new Westminster Salmon Bellies were certainly impressive. 921 goals, 880 assists. A dedicated two-way player, Paul was an inspirational leader by example, and in 1980, he became the 200th inductee into the Hall of Fame. What a wealth of knowledge these individuals have, not only about the game, but also its history. One of the many legends which has surfaced here tonight is Mr. Leo Nicholson. Here's another look at a former inductee of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. '67 found Leo Nicholson inducted into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. He was the first broadcaster to coin the phrase, "He shoots, he scores." Calling the play-by-play, Leo brought all the action, and sometimes more than there really was, into the living rooms of British Columbia. Leo Nicholson was truly the voice of box lacrosse in Canada. Coming up from the Grand Ballroom, the opening ceremonies of the 1991 Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame Awards Banquet.
British Columbia's Children's Hospital, something very different is happening. It's a hospital that doesn't particularly look like a hospital. A place where the family forms part of the treatment team, along with specialized staff, the best equipment, and advanced research. It's for kids from all over the province. All because kids like Jamie Peterson deserve a future to go back to. Please help Children's Hospital. Our future's in it.
Welcome back to a very special edition of Rogers 4 Sports. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Erickson, and in just a minute we'll have the official piping in of the head table and the inductees. But while we're waiting, let's take a look at what's coming up next week on Rogers 4 Sports. From Bear Creek Park in Surrey, the 1991 championship final between the Surrey Rams and the Okanagan Sun. These two teams have gone neck and neck all season long, and I believe they knew from the very beginning that it was going to come down to one final game. So next week on Rogers 4 Sports, the BC Junior Football Championship Final with the Surrey Rams hosting the Okanagan Sun. Check your local listings for times in your area. Well, the guests of tonight's celebration sit down for a marvelous banquet. I'm going to talk right now to a gentleman that is the chairman of the Board of Governors of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Mr. Keith McEachern. Welcome to Rogers 4 Sports, Keith. And I'd like to get a little bit of an insight from you as to the actual operational facility of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame.
The Lacrosse Hall of Fame is located in New Westminster, and we have a facility there that is provided by the city of New Westminster. The Board of Governors are people that are selected to serve, to run the Hall of Fame in a sense of they give direction to the curator, and they select the builders. And then we have a category called the Player Selection Committee, which is headed by another group of people which are here this evening, and that is both East and West. We have an Eastern Selection Committee and a Western Selection Committee.
How are the people put on the Board of Governors?
The Board of Governors is, I guess you would say it is by request of the present board. We select people that we feel that can serve the game of lacrosse in its historical sense best. And so in my position, I look for people perhaps that are coming up that know the game well, have played or coached or been involved at some manner, and that we feel that in the future can serve the game best.
You've got a lot of artifacts over there from all sorts of stuff. Do you have a hard time getting those things?
No. We have a hard time getting certain artifacts, but really Archie Miller, who's the curator, they have rooms full of things, but the stuff that the artifacts that you put on display are the real unique things. But there are many things that never reach display stage. There's rooms full of them.
I know it's a fantastic complex, and I've just been mesmerized anytime I've been there. And you gentlemen deserve just a whale of a hand. You do a tremendous job.
Thank you very much. Most of the work is done by the curators. So.
Well, it takes everyone. Everybody has to work together, and as a group, you do a marvelous job. And a very special thank you to you, and a very special to the city of New West for letting the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame be there.
Thank you very much.
In our special retrospective look back at the individuals who have shaped the organization, we would be remiss in not mentioning one man who has quite frankly contributed more to the game of lacrosse than any other person. Albert Ab Brown has done it all for the game of lacrosse. He played both the field and box versions of Canada's national sport for almost a quarter century. After his playing days were over, he turned his talents to coaching and produced many great young players. There is not a person who has contributed more to the game of lacrosse than Ab Brown, a former Lacrosse Hall of Fame inductee. Welcome back, everyone, and this is the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame Awards Banquet. And we're going to turn things over right now to my colleague, Mr. Jim Cox.
Thank you, and my thanks to Chairman Keith McEachran of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Member of Parliament Don Black, Your Worship Mayor Betty Toporowski of the City of New Westminster, inductees, head table guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 25th annual induction of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. It took this organization 25 years to decide that women should be equal members. Tonight, we're going to catch up. Our first builder inductee, and just for the benefit of everybody here and those who are watching, we induct the builders first, the players second, and we do it in alphabetical order in each category. So our first builder inductee actually started a love affair with lacrosse as a 13-year-old bantam player in his native Peterborough, Ontario. He moved through the midget and juvenile ranks, became a junior player in 1956, when his team won the Eastern Championship. Then he graduated to the senior Peterborough team in 1958. It was about this time that he started his behind-the-bench activity, taking over the manager's job of the Hastings Legionnaires Juniors, piloting them to the Minto Cup Championship in 1961. He moved to the executive of the senior organization in 1962, and he held several offices there until 1979. Now that's 18 years. During that period, he found time to head the minor lacrosse organization in Peterborough, as well as coach the youngsters in it. His bantam team won the provincial title in 1968, his midget team the same in 1970, his junior A team won the Eastern Championship in 1971. And then, for 4 straight years, he coached the Peterborough Juniors to the Minto Cup Championship. The most memorable of that, in 1974, his team set a record, undefeated through the entire season, playoffs and Minto Cup, 46 straight games without a loss. In 1978, he moved up to coach the senior team, taking a group of juniors, House League players, 3 ex-pros, and he molded them into a true Cinderella team that won the Mann Cup in its first season. They won the Eastern title again the following year. In 1981, he went back to the juniors. Under his coaching, the Peterborough Juniors won 5 Minto Cups in just an 8-year span. In all, he coached Peterborough junior teams to 11 Minto Cups. Uniquely, he has played lacrosse at every level from bantam to senior and has coached very successful at those very same levels too. He and his wife Dorothy have 5 children, 3 of whom are also very active in sports. Ladies and gentlemen, a lacrosse builder in the purest sense. Let's welcome into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Ben Floyd. Chairman Keith will make the presentations.
Head table, Mr. Chairman, and fellow lacrosse people, it's certainly an honor for me and a humbling experience. When I was told about this, I didn't know what to think, and as the time grew closer, it became more of a reality, and it's one of the most humbling experiences I think I've ever had. But it's sure nice to see this many lacrosse people in one room supporting lacrosse. And I certainly appreciate it. And I'd like to mention some of the people who have helped me along the way. I know when I was a kid growing up in Peterborough, we had fellows like Ira Dundas, who coached Paul Purnell and I for years. Paul and I were neighbors with Larry Ferguson and Cy Coombs and Ronnie J. Paul unfortunately came out to the West, and we missed him badly in the East. His type of leadership and character is not easy to come by. And he's done a great job out here, I know, and he still works in lacrosse. And I spent the last 2 days with Paul, 3 days. He told me if I didn't say these nice things about him, he'd throw me out. Actually, he wouldn't, really. And his wife, Joan, has been a wonderful hostess for my wife and I. But I can remember the fellows that coached us were lacrosse players and dedicated sort of people. And I say to you Salmon Belly seniors or any juniors that are here, don't forget the guys that coached you. You know, when you get to be the age and you can put a little bit back into the game, you can't play anymore. Your knees go and your ankles go and your head's already gone, probably. See, you know, don't forget to put a little bit back in the game and coach. I know when I was coaching, I didn't think about getting into the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. You don't do it for that reason. I was very fortunate. I started off coaching at the Bantam level, and had players that had outstanding ability, and molding them into a team was fairly easy. And by the time they hit junior, gosh, all I do is open and close the door pretty well, and they knew what to do. I could just kind of frown, and they knew I was upset, and they would respond. And I had great players in J.J. Johnson and Jan McGee and Jimmy and Bobby Wasson, and Jimmy Gow, who's out in Victoria now. Some real great role players. They weren't all top goal scorers, but they knew their job. And I think back, I haven't got anything prepared, so I'm going to ramble a little bit. I think back of when I played a bit of lacrosse with Cy and Paul and Ronnie J. and the teams we had in Peterborough. We had a great goaltender in Pat Baker, and the role players we had there. And I think you learn from your playing, your coaches you have, coaching teams. One of the greatest experiences I had was, and nobody knows about this probably, I coached a junior C team in Kingston as well as the team in Peterborough, because I was kind of selfish. I was looking for players from that area, and I used to go down and coach them, and they won the Junior C championship, and it was a great thrill to see these kids who didn't know much about playing. They were eager to learn, and that made them very easy to coach. And they won the Junior C championship, and it was a great thrill for me and for them, and I ended up with a couple of their players moving up into play for our A team. So it did help our team out too. So never turn down an opportunity to help an area get started, if you can possibly do that. The other thing I'd like to say is congratulations to all the inductees tonight. I think ladies should have went first, but unfortunately my name came first, I guess. I know I watched Kevin Alexander play for years and Red Crawford. I didn't see that much of Al Luthwaite. Kevin played against us 2 or 3 years, and he was always a menace to Peterborough. But we did appreciate his skills and talent. He's, I think when you went to a game and Kevin Alexander played, you came away talking about Kevin Alexander. He was an exciting ball player, and I know I appreciated watching him. And Red Crawford was one of those guys that just never quit working in the game. I couldn't believe how much beating Red could take and keep going. And a great face-off man. And Tony D'Amico, Peterborough he was so good that Peterborough used to even pick him up for playoffs. So that's my memory of the game. And the friends you make in the game, and I made many friends. I had some here. one of the first guys, I think it was in '72, Wally Donaldson came east with his wife and the team from the west, and we beat the hell out of them. But the one thing I remember most of it was that Wally trying to catch a mouse in our kitchen so he could stick it in somebody's pocket that he didn't like from the west. And he's never forgot it. He reminded me of it tonight, so thanks for remembering me that, Wally. And I think the other thing I remember was one of the fellas I met, I think the first year out here, '71, and I'd heard a lot about him, was a guy by the name of Jack Fulton. And I think the description best I heard about Jack was he was so honest, he's sickening. And I remember him asking me to set out a certain player in '71. I don't know if anybody remembers the '71 series. I'm sure the Duranys will. But they beat us out in 7 games here, and it was record crowds at Queen's Park, and 3 games went into overtime. And we learned a lot, or at least I did, from that series. And it was memorable, but we had a certain player who made an obscene gesture, and Jack came to me after the game and he said, would you mind setting that player out for the next game or the rest of the series? And I said, well, I got so many injuries, Jack, I'd like to, but I can't. So the next season rolled around, and this guy had scored 50 goals the year before, and I thought, well, that was in the back of my memory, and I said, I'll cut this guy, or I'll send him to Junior B. I sent him down to the Junior B team, and I said, you show me you can behave, and I'll bring you back up. Well, the guy got just upset, so he quit, and he came out and he played for the Salmon Bellies. And he played pretty well for the Salmon Bellies, too, by the way. So, Jack, you got one on me there. But and I reminded Jack of that, and he said, oh, I didn't remember who it was. But I certainly appreciate the honor and the effort that goes into all this, and the fellows coming from the east. I know Carl Madgett has put years and years and years of work into lacrosse, and he's another guy that's shown a lot of character for lacrosse, and one of the fellows that we look up to in the east. And I just wish he was from Peterborough instead of Brampton. And Blaine McDonald's here. He's done an excellent job taking over from Mush Thompson, and Mush spent many years. And Mush's team beat us out, I remember, in '57 when we should have won in junior. And Paul and I haven't forgot it, Mush. And in fact, Gord scored the 2 goals in the 7th game that beat us out. His son did. And you remember, I guess when it's all over, is the good times and the players and your associations with everybody. And I certainly do. And lacrosse has been good for me, and it's a great sport. You don't have to be a freak to play it. You don't have to be 7 feet tall or 290 pounds. Some of the greatest players were 130, 140 pounds. I look at Kevin Alexander. He's not a giant, but he was a great player, and Bobby Allen was the same way. And Jimmy Wasson, I think, weighed 135 pounds and was a great player. And it's a true amateur sport, and I hope it stays that way. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. Mentioned earlier, this is the 25th time that we've inducted people into the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and I think I've been in this position in all but 6 of those times, but I don't think any time is going to give me more pleasure than this next one. This is the 36th consecutive year that our next builder has been continuously involved in lacrosse. While working for the YMCA, she volunteered to do some typing and to distribute BC Lacrosse Association materials. And as they say in show business, the rest is history. It was only a matter of a few weeks before her home became the unofficial office of the BCLA, handling all the inquiries from all over the province. But in 1970, thanks to her efforts, the BCLA was able to open a full-time office, and our inductee became its first employee. She worked 9 to 5 in the office, and then, instead of going home, she spent her evenings and often weekends attending games, tournaments, meetings, making presentations to educational groups, much more than she could ever be compensated for. Later, as the office grew, she recruited the staff and organized the lottery ticket sales that generate the operating revenue for the BCLA. She worked hard, much beyond the call of duty, to promote the introduction of soft lacrosse in the school physical education system, and her favorite aspect of the game, lacrosse for women. She was appointed the Women's Commissioner of the Canadian Lacrosse Association, worked with the international lacrosse groups to organize the Women's World Box Lacrosse Championships in Montreal in 1982. The trophy they presented that day bears her name as its donor. You can't find truer recognition by the World Organization of anyone's devotion to the game. Later that same year, she headed the Canadian women's field lacrosse team to the Bryan World Championships in Nottingham, England, a trip that hopefully she will repeat in 1993. She receives tremendous support from her husband, Norm, their 6 children, 4 with spouses, and 12 grandchildren. A strong family unit that reflects her devotion and her dedication to the things that she believes in. Tonight, we're not only welcoming the first women inductee in the history of the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, but one of the most deserving true builders of all time, Dorothy Evelyn Robertson.
Pin on the back. There. Got it. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Step right up there.
I guess it goes without saying I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you're here. This occasion, for many years in my life, has been the highlight of the lacrosse year. It's a wonderful event. I have been coming since 1970 to these induction banquets. I've always enjoyed them. I never ever thought that I would be up here. Now I know how they all felt. This is an honor, there's no doubt about it. Thank you, all of you, for your very warm welcome. I really appreciate it. It's page 1. I might even get comfortable, who knows? Have you ever considered what turns your life might have taken had certain incidents not happened, or if they had happened? I spent a lot of time trying to prepare for this talk tonight. I didn't have much luck. But I did a lot of remembering when I was doing it. And I was wondering just that. What if? What if? Probably the one person most responsible for me being here tonight is my husband. He liked grade 10 math so much that he decided to do it again the following year. In so doing, he sat behind me in Miss Urquhart's math class. We became acquainted. In fact, he got quite friendly. The following spring, he introduced me to lacrosse. He was with the Salmon Bellies at that time. Our dates consisted of meeting outside the arena, and he would walk me in with the kit bags. I would sit in the aisles because there was never any seats, and he would be down there with the team. It was a wonderful date. But I did develop a love for this game of lacrosse at that time. And that began my lifelong interest in Norm Robertson and lacrosse. Sometimes I'm sure he's not sure which comes first. Then I have a brother. He's responsible for the next step. He became involved with the BCLA while I was working at the Y. You're right. Once he became involved, he promptly volunteered me to do a little typing. Thanks, Lloyd. When can I stop? John Donne said it so very aptly. No man is an island. How right he was. You see in front of you one person standing here, being honored. But this person is here only because there are many, many of you out there, and many others along the way, who've touched my life. They have supported me. They've encouraged and contributed in so many ways. My family, all of them, and I have a lot. A son, 5 daughters, sons-in-law, a daughter-in-law, grandsons, granddaughters, a sister, brothers, nieces, nephews, and on it goes. They have always given me their full support in all of my endeavors. Thanks, group. You're all very special to me. Now we get down to some specifics. My friends, and I have many, many friends in lacrosse. Stan Shillington comes to mind. Most of you know Stan as a master statistician, and that he is. But what you probably don't know, that he is an extremely pushy, bossy individual. That's true. I've been waiting a long time to say this. Over the years, Stan has always made sure that I never lacked for jobs to do. He was always ready to add more if he thought I was sloughing off. But thanks, Stan, you did help. When can I stop? One of the major highlights, which stands out in my memory, was the opportunity given to me to recruit and take a team to England to compete in the first World Championship for women's lacrosse. To do this, we had to convince the girls who were already playing a terrific, skillful game of box lacrosse to switch to a totally new game, one they had never even seen, let alone played. One call, and Dave Evans took on the overwhelming task of learning the game and then teaching it to the girls. He did such a fine job that our Canadian team, which was not expected to win a game, came in third in that World Championship. It was probably one of the proudest moments in my life, standing there on the edge of a cricket pitch in Nottingham, England, watching this Canadian team playing their hearts out. It was a memorable occasion, and for that I have to thank Dave Evans. It couldn't have happened without you, Dave. Last year in British Columbia, we celebrated 100 years of existence. And what do you do when you have a birthday? You have a party, of course. Once again, one call, and without any hesitation, Sowen Gill took on this job. He masterminded one of the most successful events that I've ever been involved with in lacrosse. Thanks, Sowen. You did good. Excuse me. In all of the wonderful, hectic, sometimes frustrating days of working for Lacrosse, this is probably one of the nicest things that I can do. I'm able to turn over the picky, boring, mundane tasks to someone else, knowing that they would get done quickly and cheerfully. This is to one of the best co-workers anyone could ever ask for. Thanks, Heather. I probably am preaching to the converted. I don't have to tell you, but I'm going to anyway. Lacrosse is the finest game in the world. It has a proud history, and in my estimation, it has an even more exciting future. Lacrosse has played a large part in my life. It's given me many, many years of pleasure. And it has been a privilege to serve it. Thank you.
The British Columbia Lacrosse Association would like to make a special presentation to Dorothy. So I'd like to call upon the Vice President of the BCLA, Randy Radnich. Here he comes. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Now we move into the player section. Our first player inductee for 1991 played his entire illustrious lacrosse career in his hometown of Victoria, British Columbia. He started playing this game at the age of 5. Most of us couldn't even tie our shoes, let alone lace up a lacrosse stick. He was playing junior by the time he was 15. In his last year of junior, when the McDonald's won the Minto Cup, 1976 it was, he amassed 217 points in 28 games. It was certainly no surprise then that he won the Rookie of the Year trophy in 1977 when he joined the Senior Shamrocks. And it was just the first of many, many awards in his 10-year senior boxer career. He was the league's most valuable player in 1980. He was the scoring champion 5 times, named to the Western Association's first All-Star team 7 times. He was a Mann Cup winner in both 1979 and 1983. Now, all of this is pretty heady stuff, but the most impressive thing about this player is his consistency. Game after game, year after year, he performed at a top level. In 10 seasons, he compiled some very amazing records. 156 hat tricks, the highest ever. Now, when you consider he played 300 games, that means he scored three goals or more every second game. He scored the most game-winning goals, 40. The most goals in a period, 6. The fastest 3 goals, 13 seconds. The most power play goals in a season, 30, and in a career, 268. He scored 7 goals in a game 5 times. 6 goals in a game 13 times, both records. In all, he holds or shares 31 senior lacrosse records. In his senior career, he scored 797 goals, 584 assists, 1,381 points. That's 5 points a game for 300 straight games. We welcome as our first 1991 player inductee to the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, a true lacrosse star, Kevin Alexander.
People wanting the picture. You're a star now. Yeah. Very well deserved. Thanks for a lot of great years. Thank you.
That sounds like a lot of fun, Jim. I got to tell you, that's probably the warmest welcome I've ever had in New Westminster. We always call it New Westminster because it really makes the locals mad. You know, when Keith called me up and he said, your name's come up and it's your turn to go into the Hall of Fame, I didn't know how to, I didn't know what to think or how to react. I thought, holy cow, I think I'm a little young for that or something. I thought, you know, you got to be, you know, a little bit older than this, or, you know, somewhere around the age of maybe Dave Durante or something. I don't know. You know. But lacrosse has been a lot of fun, and I guess really what you get out of it is what we have here tonight is the friends and the camaraderie and, you know, a little bit of travel and stuff like that. But, you know, it's really what you put into it is for the fun of it and the people that you meet and that sort of thing. And really, you know, when you look around at the people sitting with you and by you, you can see why we all had so much fun at it. We were coming across on the ferry this morning, this afternoon, whatever, and I started thinking, and it's been like 21 years since I played my first game in the WLA, and I'm going, wow. And I started thinking, I got to be one of the only people that one year I was a water boy. When I was 13, I played my first game the next year. I don't know if that's a reflection on me or things were a little thin at my hometown there. You know, you go out and you play, and you go out and you're having a lot of fun, and you see what lacrosse does to people and what it brings out in people and the sort of people that it makes, and it makes you think of a couple of things. I remember we were playing a game one night in Coquitlam, and I guess it was where Gordy Reset was on the team. We were playing in Nanaimo. And Gordy's one of those guys that actually he's into boxing now. He's having a bit of a rough time actually in the boxing. I understand he may be retiring because the referee keeps standing on his hands. But Gordy's one of those guys that he'd do anything to win. So we're out there and we're playing the game, and Brian Evans, I guess he was our leading scorer for a couple of years up there, and he had taken a cheap shot, or what our coach construed as a cheap shot. And in fact, I remember it was Ray Durrani. So the coach says, "Gordy, get out there and straighten out that Durrani." Gordy, being the team guy he was, bang, jumps over the boards, sprints right to the circles in the far end of the arena, and he gets there and he's giving it the sprints back to the bench, says, "What number is he?" But it takes those kind of team guys. Same city, up in the Nine, we're playing a home game. And Jack Castline, Jack's a local guy here from New Westminster. And Jack's a fairly excitable guy, and on this night it was a close game the whole way, and we're all, right into the game. Jack was never one not to be in the game, and he's kind of standing behind the bench, and he's yelling and screaming, and I'm sitting on the bench, and he's right in my ear. I'm going, "Jack, settle down. It's okay. It's only the first period." "Yeah, I'm okay. So he stands back. We're about halfway through the third period, and here's old Jack. He's got a couple teeth missing. He looks kind of like a hockey player, really. And he's yelling and screaming in my ear again. I said, Jack, settle down." He says, I'm okay. I said, "Well, if you're okay, take your foot out of the water bucket." Yeah, he was a pretty excitable guy. When I was a little bit younger, I was fortunate enough, I played a fair number of senior games in my younger years. And back then, we had some very notable individuals that used to referee. A couple of guys that come to mind were Harry Ferguson and Barry Balance. We used to think they were bad. That was till we started watching the games these days. But you can remember back then, all the players used to run to the face-offs, and there's very little of that now. But the reason we'd run to the face-offs, because if Harry was standing there with the ball and he was going to do the face-off, it was just like a sprint to the face-off. They thought it was for show, but it was when you got there, Harry'd go, "Hey, look at that one in row 4, section D. Got that big hooters." First guy there got to see who he was talking about. Another guy that was a great referee, Wally Henderson. A lot of the older people remember him. I remember Wally quite well. He's the only guy, actually, that you couldn't tell if you were watching on TV if it was going forward or backwards, because when he used to run backwards, it was just as fast. He had those arms going like this. Holy cow. One day I went down the middle, I can remember, and some guy grabbed me by the shoulder this way. Some guy just drives me in the front, flattens me, and I'm getting up and I'm whining when I'm running off. I'm pretty famous for that. I said, "Jesus, Wally, that guy drilled me from the front, the guy's holding me from the back. Read the rule book." Wally's going like he does backwards about 30 miles an hour. "Don't tell me about the rule book, Sonny, I wrote it." He was in on the rules committee. Yeah. One of my earlier games playing senior, I played with the Shamrocks actually when I was about 15, I guess. I had both my brothers were going to take care of me. And I don't know, somebody took a shot and the ball was kind of bouncing around inside the dotted line, so I kind of made a reach for it, and bang, next thing I know, I'm on my back, and I thought I was seeing stars, but it was the lights on the ceiling in Memorial Arena in Victoria. So I kind of looked up, and everybody's going the other way with the ball, and I think he was wearing number 99 there. It was Al Luthwaite running away with the ball, and it didn't hurt till I saw who it was. And I guess one guy I should mention that after all this, probably without his contribution I wouldn't be here. And usually when you're growing up and stuff, you go to your parents and that sort of stuff. They teach you, about girls and all that stuff. But this part was basically, I got this girl I really like, and how am I going to dance real close with her? And it wasn't my mother that taught me. It was actually the person that taught me how to waltz was Frank Nielsen. But I guess really the moral of the story is it's the people that you come out for, and that's why we all play for the teammates, and even the guys that you play against, you got the utmost respect for them all. You know, I've been very fortunate myself. I've had a good bit of travel. I've been to the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic demonstration sport in the Commonwealth, and the Olympics, all over the eastern states of the United States, mostly through field lacrosse. And you know, I'm one of those really fortunate people. I even got to go to Peterborough. You know? You can't beat that. But, you know, on a more serious note, there is a couple of people, I guess, that I would like to thank. You never get them all, and I don't pretend to. And, but there is people that are involved with your, you know, your upcoming in the game and stuff. And I guess I got to start first and foremost with my parents. My mother, stand up. And of course, you really don't know lacrosse if you never met my father. And both my brothers here, Ken and Frank. Actually, Kenny was out there, he playing lacrosse, and he could have made a lot more money if he just went out and chopped wood. He's a good lacrosse player, but he sure laid a lot of bruises on people. It's just terrible if he had to practice. He coached us one time in Junior B. Had a guy on the team named Barry Hilton, and I guess we were doing some one-on-ones, and poor Barry come in, and he gave him a skip and a dance, and the next thing I know, he was sitting somewhere in the cheap seats, and he was finished for about 2 years. You know, there's people, Bill Monroe, great coach I had over the years. Bob Cool, another good player. I would say that me and Cooley, probably as good as you get, two people out there. Chris Hall as a coach. Chris Hall is a great, he's been a good influence on me as last few years. He's a very intelligent person, and we look up to each other a fair bit. And, you know, I hate to leave out, there's a lot of little unsung people like Art Webster, Dave Loudon, those kind of guys that they don't get this kind of lights, and boy, are they bright. But without those kind of people, this game doesn't succeed. Ranjit Dillon, person to look up to, coming up through the ranks. Jim Lynch, another person I played a lot of lacrosse with. A little dry here. Thought it was water. A little better though. One person's not here, and he had a lot to do with my skill and talent level, was Ron Gardler. He was a manager of the George Perks Arena in Saanich, and I had free reins of the place, and I could practice for hours every day for no charge, and I didn't need to go out in the box because I didn't need to work on my tan, so it was a very worthwhile thing. I'd like to thank Ron. And of course, now a little bit of field lacrosse participation. And I guess the most patient people that I know are my wife, Patty, and my two daughters. I guess one other guy I'd like to thank for all his great and diligent work. Makes me look good, and it gives Jim all these numbers with Stan Shillington. A hell of a job. You know, speaking of writers, it reminds me when I was playing Junior A, I had a couple of good years there. We used to go over to Richmond and play. Ronnie Phillips coached for a couple of years there, and they had a writer there for the Richmond Review. His name was Wilf Hurd, and he was a great writer. By the time I left Richmond, I couldn't even get my head in the bus. One time we went over there, we had it was like a dinner banquet, all-star banquet, and sitting at the table, and he happened to be at our table. And I says, holy cow, Wilf. I says, you write some unreal articles. Yeah, he says, pretty good stuff, eh? Yeah, it's not too bad. I says, where do you come up with it? He says, well, he says, I'll tell you. He says, we got a policy at the Review, the Richmond Review. He says, never let facts stand in the way of a good story. I also would like to congratulate the other inductees, Dorothy and Ken. Ben, we've met a few times head-to-head, and I'm not sure who's ahead, but we're all winners as long as we're participating in the game. And Al's trying to get me to play this old-timer stuff. I'm not sure I want to go for it. And Mike for Tony, and I know the family's really proud. I think that's just wonderful. I would like to say one thing on a night when we're all talking about what we've done in the past and how good things have been or were. I've been watching a fair amount of lacrosse, box lacrosse, in the last year or two from, I guess, slightly different perspectives. And I think that as a whole, the whole bunch of us here, it's you people, it's myself, and a lot of other people, but we got to sort of start pulling together. We've got to bring the game into the 90s, and that may mean, that means a lot of flexibility, and the people that are doing well now, that's not where lacrosse world ends. I think that the success that people are having now may have to be, sacrificed at some point to make the overall game succeed. And I see that in comparison to, you see the U.S., the Major Indoor Lacrosse League down there. They've got a great program. They've got a good product. And don't think for 1 minute that those guys can't play lacrosse, because they can. And I think that if we tend to bury our heads in the sand, it's going to bypass us. And if we want these dinners to go on and in the future and for our game to flourish, I think that we're going to have to make a few changes and concessions for our game to succeed. And that may mean some sacrifice on some people. It means some changes for people that have been there for years and years. They've got to change their thinking a little bit, because our game must succeed and flourish. For myself in the game, I think I'm about finished playing box lacrosse. I know about that old-timers, Al. But I'm going to stay involved maybe in a little bit of officiating capacity and maybe a little bit of coaching and stuff in the field lacrosse. I got to dedicate myself a little bit more to my work, career, and that sort of thing. I would like to give Dave Durante notice that his days of beating me at golf are really being numbered now. So consider that warning, dude. And I'd just like to thank you all for being here tonight.
Kevin Alexander, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin, we received a telegram I'd like to read to you. On behalf of the Victoria Field Lacrosse League and the Victoria Women's Field Lacrosse Club, we're all very happy with your induction in the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. It's truly well-deserved. It's been a pleasure to have had the opportunity to have played with or be associated with you in the game of lacrosse. Once again, our congratulations, signed, G. Van Dillon. If I could add a personal note here, Kevin made some tremendous references to lacrosse in Victoria. One of the greatest lacrosse cities in this country, and I just hope they keep on doing it, because they are a great, great lacrosse center. Our next inductee loves the game of lacrosse so much, he still plays it even though he's retired. Now that sounds like I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe I am. He started the gutted stick game as a 12-year-old in his native Scarborough, Ontario. He played there and in Mimico, and joined the Brooklyn Redmen as a senior B player to win the league title in 1959. Well, that certainly brought him to the attention of the Port Credit Sailors, and in his first season with that OLA senior team, they won the Man Cup. He stayed with Port Credit for 4 seasons, but during that time, Brampton had added him to their roster for their Man Cup challenge in 1962. The Brooklyn Redmen beckoned in 1964, and he joined them for 3 years. They were in the Man Cup final for the first 2, and when they lost the Eastern title to Peterborough in 1966, he was again added to the Petes, and he was on his second Man Cup winner in his career. When the Professional Lacrosse League started the next year, he joined the Montreal Canadiens. Over the next 7 years, he played with St. Catharines Golden Hawks, Toronto Shooting Stars, Windsor Warlocks, and the last 3 years with the Brooklyn Redmen. At the same time, he was busy organizing the Scarborough Lacrosse Association, its major entry, the Saints, and coaching the Junior C team to the provincial title, all at the same time. After his professional playing career, there was a championship year with Brampton, 4 seasons with Brooklyn, and his final year with his own Scarborough Saints. During that time, he also coached another Scarborough team to the Junior B Canadian Championship. In 1980, he organized the Scarborough Lacrosse House League and said he was through with a playing career. However, the urge to get in the game rather than watch it saw his return to this Sunday night recreational league, as long as there were no practices, and there weren't. He's held in such high esteem that the Scarborough League retired his sweater number 12 at a recent ceremony before more than 300 enthusiastic fans. They recalled his aggressive play and especially his uncanny ability to win face-offs. Over 30 years in the game, he's still a great credit to our sport. We welcome into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Ken Red Crawford.
Very well. Turn around here. People want to take your picture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Watch that pin on top.
I got them back. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank, on behalf of my wife and myself, a very lovely dinner and steering committee, Blaine, Carl, and the people from out west here. Very appreciative. And it is indeed a great honor to be up here. I think the last time I was ready for a speech, I had it all written out, and I forgot my glasses. Tonight I didn't write it out, but I brought my glasses anyway, just in case. So Kevin's a tough gentleman to follow. He had more hat tricks than I had goals, and he only played 10 years. They brought out the latter part of my career, they brought out the 30-second rule. And that sort of shortened my career because it took me 30 seconds to get the ball up to the center, never mind get it in the other person's end. The game is, in my estimation, probably the best game in the world. Lacrosse players, fans, are just a special group of people. And it takes an awful lot, all-around conditioning and all-around good cheering to be a lacrosse fan or a player. Kevin said that there will be changes. Yes, there are many changes coming up, and especially with the National League now with 1 year under their belt in the Toronto area. And they've had the major box lacrosse down on the States now, I think, for probably 5 or 6 years. But as Kevin would put it, there will be changes, and we will not take a back step to anybody from either the West or the East. I think that just about does it. I would like to once again thank everybody here, and it is indeed a great honor. Thank you very much.
Red Crawford, ladies and gentlemen. Our final inductee for 1991 played only 7 full senior seasons, but boy, what a dominant force he was. After winning the Canadian Junior B title when he was only 14 years old, he played his first senior game with the new Westminster Salmon Bellies at the age of 16. But before he could get in a full season with the locals, he joined the Long Island entry in the professional league, played 21 games as a 17-year-old junior. He came back to New Westminster, finished the season with the Bellies, scoring 41 points in only 21 games, and for 6 of his next 7 years, he dominated all the WLA games he played. His speed and his power resulted in averaging 3 points for every one of his 216 games. His size and his aggressive checking ability also resulted in a few penalty minutes, 689 to be exact. In 1975, he took the year off from the WLA to rejoin the Long Island Pro team. In just 53 games, he scored 156 points. Now that feat is even more amazing when you consider he was off the floor so much. You see, he led the league in penalty minutes with 114. But his fierce devotion to the way lacrosse should be played began to take its toll after the 1975 season. He suffered a knee injury that never fully allowed him to play the game the way he wanted to. After much physiotherapy, he tried it again in 1976, but could play only once. In 77, he managed 7 games, only 9 in 1978. But in that playing span, he played on 3 Man Cup teams, 2 Pro League champions, was named to the league first All-Star team on 2 occasions, the first of them in his rookie year. Forced off the playing floor, he switched to coaching. He took over his beloved Salmon Belly team in the middle of that troubled 1979 season and honed it into a Man Cup champion in just 2 years. Then he retired. But not for long. 3 years later, Coquitlam Adirondacks needed help, so he spent 3 years rebuilding that team again into a senior contender. As a player, he never lost sight of winning, no matter what the physical cost. He's truly a giant among his peers. Please welcome to the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Alan Gordon Al Luthwaite.
You're on here, Al. Very well done. Very well deserved. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be inducted in the Hall of Fame, and I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame committee and all those responsible. It's something that I'll never forget and I'll always cherish. There are lots of people I have to thank tonight, and I would like to start by thanking my parents for settling and raising their family in Sapperton. It was a great place to grow up during the 50s and 60s, especially if you were an athlete. As we all know, lacrosse is a team sport, and I'd like to thank some of the people that were instrumental in my being here tonight. As you can see, I'm not very good at memorizing here. So, during my career from a dirt box at Hume Park in 1957 to the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island, New York in 1975, I was fortunate enough to play for several great coaches. All of these coaches were different in their ways and philosophies, but they were all responsible for any success I may have had along the way. One of my first coaches was Mr. Benny. He was what I consider to be the type of coach all kids should have. He had great patience. He never got excited. He was fair. He treated all the players the same, even though his son Ray was always the best player on the team. And he also took us to Shebicki's Dairy King for milkshakes after every game. I consider myself very fortunate to have been coached by Mr. B in those formative years. In 1965, Art Burrow and Ben Hoskin took over our team, and Art taught me that there are 2 ends to the lacrosse floor and that defense is just as important as offense. He also taught me the Burrow chop, which I used with great success right to the end of my playing days. One of my highlights of my career was winning the Canadian Junior B Championship in Port Arthur in 1966, Ontario, with Art as coach. Many thanks to Art and Nancy Burrow. Playing Senior A lacrosse for the Samblays was a dream of every kid that ever picked up a stick in Westminster. I was fortunate enough to play with players that were my heroes while I was growing up, in particular Doug McCrory. I remember what a thrill it was for me to play defense with Doug in 1968 when he was 34 and I was 17. Doug was probably the best coach New West ever had. He had a way of getting great performances out of even mediocre players. Doug's game plan was quite simple. The shooters shoot and the checkers check. Deviate from that plan and you sat on the end of the bench. There will always be a special place in my heart for Doug McCrory. In 1974, a new coach came on board. He wasn't your usual kind of coach. Ron Hemmerling was like nothing any of us had ever encountered. He was Rodney Dangerfield before there was a Rodney Dangerfield. That particular team didn't need a technical coach or a disciplinarian. We needed a leader, and Ron was that. He led us into every pub and night spot in the Lower Mainland. And we followed. We went 21-3 in the regular season that year, swept Vancouver in 4 straight in the playoffs, and waxed Windsor in the Mann Cup, and I thank Ron Hemmerling for that. Playing in the Pro League in 1975 was every lacrosse player's dream. Playing in places like Montreal Forum, Boston Garden, the Spectrum, and Philadelphia was unbelievable. While playing for Long Island, I was fortunate enough to play for Morley Kells, who was probably knows more about the game of lacrosse than anyone. I didn't always agree with his method, like throwing garbage cans and chairs at his players, but I learned a great deal about the game from him, for which I will always be grateful. I consider myself lucky to have played in New Westminster from 68 to 74. During those years, we won 6 Western Championships, 3 Mann Cups, and 1 World Championship. We were fortunate enough to have great players, superstars actually, like Paul Parnell, Wayne Goss, Joe Como, Les Norman. However, I've always thought that what made our team superior was the supporting cast of players. The defensive stalwarts, the loose ball specialists, the special teams players, guys that never really got a lot of notoriety, but they were absolutely essential to those championship teams. I'd like to pay tribute to some of them. Ray Benny, who I grew up with and considered to be one of the most talented players to ever play the game. I just wished he had played a little longer. Ed Goss. Ed Goss, everybody called him Wayne's little brother. I didn't do that. I called him Don's little brother. Ken Winzowski, just a great two-way player and a joy to play with. Tracy Wright, another great skill player that didn't stay around long enough. Jim Giles, the only guy I know that played 6 years and never went to Victoria one Wednesday night during that 6 years. I still don't know how the hell he got away with that. Larry Henry, the agitator, deluxe. Mac Tyler, a great crease man. Fred Greenwood, the heart the size of a football. Dave Torrey, Mickey Lynch, so many great guys. Steve Deesum, the spark plug of our team. Dave Matheson and Kerry Gallagher, probably 2 of the smartest players that ever played the game. Ken Audie, who I consider the nicest man I've ever met. And Bill Robinson and Gary Stevens, that came over from Vancouver but were instrumental in our winning championships. I consider it an honor and a pleasure to have had these fellows as teammates. There are a couple of special people I'd like to acknowledge and thank for their support. George Friend was a great trainer and a good pal to all of us, and he's sorely missed, especially at the Terminal Hotel at about 5:15 every night. Ab Brown, who's one of my heroes, he used to work long hours into the night to splice sledgehammer handles on my lacrosse sticks so I could play. I don't really know if I could have played that long without Ab and his expertise. And Ab's still going strong at 90 plus years old. Last but not least, I have to thank my good friend and teammate Ed Goss. In the late 60s and early 70s, the Samblays didn't have a tough team, especially compared to their Burrards under Pete Black. Every time we played them, I knew I was in for a long and busy night. Ed took it upon himself in those days to take the pressure off me, and in so doing took away his own game, which was scoring goals. Ed was always more concerned about his teammates than himself, and his unselfish play helped make our team as successful as we were. Thanks, Edward. I couldn't ask for a better friend or teammate. I would like to thank all the people that came out tonight to support me, my family down here, my good buddies, my friends, my ex-teammates, and some of the players that I've coached over the last few years. It was a joy to see you here tonight, and I really appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Al. Finally, a very, very special induction. If you ask anyone from St. Catharines about this inductee, they'd use phrases like best one-on-one checker, great at grabbing loose balls, pinpoint passer, deadly accurate shooter, and they must well know, because he started as a bantam in St. Catharines in 1944, was on the OLA championship team that first year. It was a good one because it moved on to the midget, the next year repeated as provincial champions. He moved up to the St. Catharines Juniors in 1946, and the next season got his first taste of a national title when they won the Minto Cup. In his final year of junior, St. Kitts again won the Eastern title. With the senior team for the next 3 seasons, he was lured away by Toronto West Yorks in 1952. That whole team moved to Orillia in 1953. 1954 saw him play with the Hamilton Tigers, the next year with Fergus Thistles. He went back to Hamilton in 56, completed his playing career there 3 years later. He was considered a very fine two-way lacrosse player, not only by his teammates, but by his opponents as well. Opposing teams picked him up 3 times for Mann Cup appearances. He won with Peterborough in 1954, was with the Petes again in 1955, and helped Long Branch in their 1957 try. Even though his playing days were completed in 1959, he remained active in lacrosse as one of the leaders and mainstays of the St. Catharines Old Boys Lacrosse Association right up until his death 2 years ago. I think the greatest tribute one could pay to his contribution is the fact that 15 of his family members are here tonight. A tribute to the prestige of this award. Tonight, we very proudly add to the honored list of players in the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame the name Tony D'Amico. We would ask Tony's brother Mike to come forward and receive these awards on behalf of Tony.
Go ahead.
Head table guests and lacrosse friends, on behalf of my brother Tony, I'd like to, the family and myself would like to thank the nominating committee for electing Tony to the Hall of Fame. And I know that Tony been here tonight. He's been honored to be. He's been honored to be nominated and be in the company of so many great lacrosse players. Again, I'd like to thank the nominating committee from the East and the West. Plus, I'd like to thank Paul Parnell for his Western hospitality. Thank you again very much. Thank you.
Dorothy, there it is. Very special recognition for all the years of hard service and hard work by you.
It's wonderful. It really is. I didn't do it for the recognition, but it's really nice to be recognized.
I'm extremely pleased for you. I can't tell you that enough. We spoke before the interview.
Yeah.
What do you see for the Canadian lacrosse holds for women's lacrosse in Canada?
Well, in all of lacrosse, there are going to be many changes. We have a number of games. We have games for school children. We have games for young adults, old adults. We have masters lacrosse, and we have women's lacrosse. This is a special, unique game, one that we can promote to a great extent because it has no checking, and parents with young girls tend to look at a hard checking game with the different eyes if their girls want to play it. So the women's game is wonderful.
Would you recommend a lot of people out there that have daughters to actually get involved and play this?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful game. It is an absolutely beautiful game. I have been a box lacrosse fan for all of these years. But when I saw that game of women's lacrosse, it's another game. It's beautiful.
What was your biggest thrill throughout your entire career?
Oh, I guess tonight has to be. It really has to be.
This has to be a highlight on behalf of the television station and everyone else here and myself. A very special congratulations. I can't say that enough. Congratulations, Dorothy.
Thank you very much.
Al referred to it. Probably 3/4 of the names of the people that you listed were from Sapperton. We had Jack Wood introduced earlier. I have this absolutely glorious photograph in our collection of a Sapperton team, and the mascot of that team is a little boy by the name of Jack Wood. So we go all the way from that part right up to Al, and I believe Dorothy has close ties to Sapperton too, so Sapperton is very important, so forget about New Westminster. I'm very pleased to be able to bring you just a little bit of information about the Hall of Fame and to let you know what we're up to, what we're doing on your behalf. First of all, I want to introduce the other curator of the Hall of Fame. There are two of us now because, believe it or not, we've got a lot of work to do. Valerie Francis, please. Now, this last year, we have had many tours and groups through, many donations to us for the Mann Cup. When it was out here, we had good television coverage, and we do get a tremendous number of questions, and questions are the thing that we tend to answer the most. Just very briefly, then, I'm going to tell you a couple of things we do, and I'm going to tell you about a couple of the donations and one rather curious thing that I found. And after all the words I heard this evening about referees, I'm not sure whether I should read it now, but I think I will. I think Kevin will want a copy to take home. We've been asked lots of questions. One of the questions we got asked about just recently from a young lady from England was, what can we tell her about Harold Smith? Now, the silence in the room is overwhelming. If I tell you that Harold Smith is better known as Jay Silverheels and played Tonto, and that Harold Smith's name appears in many trivia contests as, at his time, the #1 paid professional lacrosse player in the world, you realize we have something interesting. We found that we could not answer her question. We are now trying to rectify that situation. We get a great many questions about medals. Now that people realize they can get answers from us, when they find a medal in a drawer and it says presented to so-and-so for a lacrosse game played at Medicine Hat in 1892, they have a tendency to say, I didn't know Grandpa played lacrosse. What was going on? We do get a lot of these. One lady we made very happy asked us about her, I think it was her grandfather, a man by the name of Adamson, who played for the Vancouver team in 1910. He had a medal. He had 3 medals that were presented on one day, and she said it wasn't for a championship. What was it for? We didn't know at that point, but we tracked it down, and it turned out that Vancouver was so happy at beating New Westminster that day that the mayor of Vancouver handed everybody 3 medals for the achievement. Sorry, Wally. We get asked many different questions concerning early lacrosse. We get asked lots of questions concerning women's lacrosse. The municipality of Burnaby, right next door to us here, is going to celebrate a 100th anniversary next year. And they finally woke up about a month and a half ago and realized that they had to put the ladies Cougars lacrosse team into that history. They almost left them out. We made sure they did not do that. We've received a number of questions about the old playing fields of the past and where they are. And I can tell you now that we have now got definite proof that we've pushed the first game in British Columbia back to 1882 from 1886. So a few years ago, we celebrated the 100th anniversary in 1986. Well, that's now, we've got to move it back 4 years, and I bet we're going to move it back further as the research goes on. We've received many interesting donations, from basic donations such as photographs from 1908 and 1909 local teams. Within that same collection were programs from the 1970s for local teams. So it had gone that full length, a wonderful collection. We received from Bill McBain, the past president of the CLA, a jacket from the CLA and a Team Canada jacket from the 1970s. We also received some material from a gentleman that every one of these evenings he kept telling me, you know, Arch, I've got something for you and I'll eventually get it to you. And I said, well, I'd like to get it before you die. And is Johnny Cavill here tonight? No? Well, he got it to me. He got me all this information. He brought it in, a wonderful clock that has an inscription on it to John Cavill from the Richmond Holmes Lacrosse Club of 1937. And on that thing are such names as Grower, Arrington, Wainborn, Black, and Delmonico. So he was in good company. We also received some very interesting other pieces from him. I thought I would show you one. You see, these things, people look at sweaters like this and they say they just don't last. Well, this particular one I have is 1949 Burrard Canadian Champs from Johnny Cavill. Now, with Dorothy's honor tonight, I should mention that we get a lot of questions about the Cougars, the women's team, the Pirates, the women's team, and we have a lot of great material to do with women's lacrosse in the world, all courtesy of Dorothy, who keeps us well supplied. She comes up and says, here's another envelope, put it in the file, and we do. And in honor of that, I wanted just to mention that one of the things we received this year is because of another contact of Dorothy's. We received a booklet that has to do with the 75th anniversary of the All England Women's Lacrosse Association. We received a number of items from them, including some histories of lacrosse written in France. And so we're going through them now because there's some rather curious dates that they have of early references to the game. In the foreword of this book, I thought I would read you a quick piece. The All England Women's Lacrosse Association is now celebrating 75 successful years, and it must be thanks to the dedicated support that is received from its volunteers. Well, we know that's how we get to be here. This has not only helped the sport in England, but has contributed to its progress overseas, particularly in North America and Australia. I enjoyed my brief playing career at school, and I am delighted that lacrosse continues to provide tremendous pleasure for its players, and I welcome the association's impressive development plans, which will give even more people the opportunity of playing. We now add to our list of lacrosse players Princess Anne. And we have one other that's rather interesting, a reference to 1876, a game of lacrosse played between Canadians and Iroquois Indians at Windsor Castle. And Queen Victoria wrote, "The game was very pretty to watch. It is played with a ball, and there is much running." I want to leave you with one curious piece here, and this all came because of a very close association and tie we have with the Canada Sports Hall of Fame in Toronto. We keep very close to archives and museum collections across the country because obviously we can't house it all, we just want to know where it is. We received a call one day when they said that they had a lacrosse stick. The lacrosse stick was autographed with a great many signatures they recognized, but it was old and they didn't know the event. They asked if we could identify the event. We could not. They asked if we could put a price on the stick. We put a rough price on the stick for them, and we said we hope you'll find more information. In about 4 days, they apparently received a scrapbook that went along with the event, and then it all made sense, and it becomes very important. And to collectors, it's the kind of thing that they would probably kill for, but the world of lacrosse has it and they can't have it. What happened was in the summer of 1934 in Toronto, Ontario, an oil tanker was lying at the docks. That tanker caught fire and exploded, and 3 firemen were killed. The Evening Telegram, the newspaper of the day, it may still be there, is it? Can someone tell me? No? Put together the Evening Telegram Readers Trust Fund, and they put together a benefit evening of lacrosse. They put together the evening with many young players, many old players, with all the proceeds going to the families of these 3 firemen. Joe Lally donated 12 sticks. The sticks were autographed by all the old-timers who were there, and they were given away if your ticket was drawn at the game. One of these sticks is now in the hands of the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. I've been unable to pry it out of their hands at this point. Maybe we'll send Al back to get it. But of interest, a lot of people took part. I just list here 7 of the names. These names are probably on the sticks. Bill Anthony, Bun Clark, Hap Day, King Clancy, Lionel Conacher, Charlie Conacher, and Newsy Noland. Not a bad group to have in a room. I now leave you with this piece. If you want copies of this, we'll arrange it for you at some point. You have to send $2 to the Hall of Fame, and we'll send you a copy. This is from the program for this game in 1934. This is deadly serious. It's entitled For Managers and Players, and when I say it's serious, it is written serious. This is not a joke item, but I find that I laugh every time I read it. Here we go. Team managers can lighten the burdens of the referees by carrying out the following suggestions. You're supposed to have your teams and your players and everybody there on time. Do not permit your players to talk back to the referee. You have a team captain whose privilege it is to ask the referee for a ruling on any penalty. Players should realize that refereeing a lacrosse match is not easy. It demands the best judgment of an official at all times. Officials cannot follow the play and render impartial rulings if the players take it into their heads to talk back and endeavor to make life miserable for him. We should post these in all the locker rooms. There is no pleasure to the referee in imposing penalties, but he must see that the game is played according to the rules. Give the official your confidence. He has no axe to grind against you or any member of your own or the opposing team. In a closely contested match, the referee is under more severe strain than any of the players. He needs your cooperation. Let him see that he has it by your gentlemanly conduct on the field of play. If you are illegally checked by your opponent, give the referee a chance to inflict the penalty. Do not take the law into your own hands by striking back. Should the foul escape the notice of the official, have your team captain speak to the referee. The referee has only one pair of eyes and cannot see everything that goes on in the game. To err is human, and this applies to players and referees. Sometimes I wonder. Ladies and gentlemen, lacrosse very much is a family sport. We've witnessed that tonight. I think there's been more emotion on this front dais today than at any other, and for good reason from both sides of the country. Thank you. We'll see you next year.
That was, of course, Archie Miller, the curator for the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And there you can see it, the plaque for Dorothy Robertson, the first lady to ever be inducted in the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame since 1966. It's in its inception. Well, that pretty well sold everything right there, but what we're going to do right now is take you down a trip to memory lane. Before we leave, everyone, we're going to take a look at a piece we had on Willie Patchell. Willis Patchell was a great defenseman with the new Westminster Salmon Bellies and a member of their professional world championship team in the early 20s. The highlight of Willis Patchell's career came when he earned the right to be a member of the Canadian lacrosse team for the 1928 Olympics. Willis Patchell was posthumously inducted into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame in 1976. And that's what Willis Patchell exemplifies for the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And joining me right now is my host of this evening, Mr. Jim Cox. This has to be a very, very exciting moment for you.
I look forward to it every year. You know, it's you'd say it's sort of the same, but they're different people. They have different reactions to what goes on, and it's probably the one game in Canadian sport that really honors its past better than any other in a totally amateur way. I mean, the pros, they have their sort of benevolent funds and so on. There's no money involved here. They're just all coming because they enjoy being together with the guys they used to bash around.
And you were saying this is your 19th season?
Yeah, this is. It's been going 25 years. I've done 19 of them. I did the first one, and because of other sports conflicts along the route, I missed 6, but I've done all the others.
Do you get a chance to cover much lacrosse?
Not now, unfortunately. I broadcast lacrosse on radio from 1945 to 1954. And then too many other things were happening, and we kind of slid away from lacrosse because it is truly an amateur sport. And as far as attracting crowds, that's what they would like to do. But I think the players get more kick out of it than the fans do for one reason. It's played indoors in the summer. If they could play it outdoors in the summer or indoors in the winter, it might go better.
Well, it might. You must have seen a lot of changes. Do you think it's really been beneficial to the game?
It's a faster game now than it used to be, but one thing I miss is the wooden floors where you'd hear all these people running down the floors going clunk, clunk, clunk like a herd of horses, where now they're playing terrazzo and it's kind of quiet. The 30-second rule speeds up the game, but it in a way, it penalizes the penalty killers, the guys that used to take the ball and hold on to it for 2 minutes and not get a shot away till the team came back to full strength. They were the guys with the cuts in the skull and all that stuff. But they were experts in the field, and it was kind of interesting. They were the guys that could generate the bad guy, good guy image in the crowd, whereas now you got to get rid of the ball in 30 seconds or it's gone. But on the other hand, it's a faster game, and I guess that's what today demands. This is a sort of a everything at once age, and that's what they want.
Well, contrary to popular belief, this is Canada's national sport.
Absolutely. Don Black, the Member of Parliament, is here tonight, defended that in the House of Commons. When somebody who will remain nameless tried to introduce a bill that said hockey should be the national sport, she reminded them that lacrosse was, and it still is.
Thank you very much for joining me, Jim Cox. It's been my pleasure having you here and being the MC for this evening.
We hope really Rogers will be back next year because you make a wonderful contribution to this evening, and we do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. For Jim Cox and myself, Steve Erickson, that's all we're going to do right now. Thanks for joining, and I'll leave you with this reminder. If you don't play sport, at least be one. Meals for the Rogers 4 production crew provided by Venus Place, specializing in fine Greek and Italian cuisine. Venus Place has been serving the New Westminster area for 19 years. Venus Place, 320 6th Street, New Westminster. Phone 524-6322.